This podcast may contain explicit language. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses the unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
And tonight, we also welcome back our returning celebrity guest, host and creator of the Best Picture cast, making his 13th appearance on the show to date. It's Kieran B.
Good to be back. Your local resident agitator is back at his regular salary, which is 12.5 cents an hour. I'm ready to go. Hopefully, someone like Peterson W. Hill doesn't come along and cut that in half, because the math gets hairy from there.
I don't know. I mean, he's got several, but it's going to be a while before he's back. If he has his druthers, when I put out the schedule for next year, it could be very easily surpassed, especially because my mom missed her last two appointments.
6.25 cents a day. It's getting... Times are tough.
That is true. That is true. On the backs of hard labor. But we trudge on. Tonight, for our 253rd episode, we discuss The Grapes of Wrath from 1940, directed by John Ford, written by Nunnally Johnson, cinematography by Greg Toland, music by Alfred Newman, starring Henry Fonda as Tom Joad, Jane Darwell as Ma Joad, John Carradine as Jim Casey, Charlie Grapewin as William James Grandpa Joad, Doris Bowden as Rose of Sharon or Rosa Sharon Joad, Russell Simpson as Pa Joad, O.Z. Whitehead as Al Joad, John Quaylen as Muley Graves, Eddie Quillen as Connie Rivers, Zeffie Tilbury as Grandma Joad, Frank Sully as Noah Joad, Frank Darien as Uncle John, also a Joad, Daryl Hickman as Winfield Joad, Shirley Mills as Ruthie Joad, Roger Imhoff as Mr. Thomas, Grant Mitchell as Caretaker, Charles D. Brown as Wilkie, John Arledge as Davis, and Ward Bond as Policeman. Background for the movie: The Grapes of Wrath was wide released on March 15th, 1940. It was met with widespread critical acclaim of the time and would go on to be nominated for 6 Oscars: Best Picture, Actor for Henry Fonda, Adapted Screenplay, Film Editing, and Sound. It would win John Ford his second Best Director award, and Supporting Actress went to Jane Darwell. The American Film Institute has recognized this film on the following lists: AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies at number 21, AFI's 100 Years, 100 Heroes and Villains, with Tom Joad coming in as the number 12 hero, 100 Years, 100 Cheers at number 7, and 100 Years, 100 Movies, 10th Anniversary Edition at number 23. In 1989, it was one of the first 25 films selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the United States National Film Registry, and it has been widely cited as one of the greatest films of all time. The Grapes of Wrath currently holds a 100% rating among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, a 96 score on Metacritic, and a 4.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So as we begin each week, Dad, what is your relationship to this movie?
I did not see this movie until probably about a decade ago. I think in large part because I had read the book. I read it between my sophomore and junior year of college, and I remember working, painting, and sitting under a tree after lunch and reading my book for half an hour before we started back at painting. So I was familiar with the story, but I had never seen the movie. And then I think it happened to be on TMC or TCM. I watched it and regretted not having seen it before.
I think I only watched this maybe about 5-6 years ago when I was crossing it off the list from the AFI Top 100. It was obviously a well-renowned film. John Ford, Henry Fonda. I don't remember a ton about watching it the first time, but I put it on the show for very obvious reasons.
Yeah, for me, it's a pretty special connection here with this one. My mom passed away 8 years ago, was an English teacher and educator for many years before she retired. And like any passionate English teacher, reacted viscerally when report cards came home with not so good English grades from my direction. And I was always a good English student. Now, this would be in high school. I went on to be an English major in college, and this was a blip in the map. And, my mom sat me down and was like, what's the story here? And I just said, I can't with this book. I can't read it. I can't vibe with it. The language, the cadence of it, I just can't do it. I think I failed a couple quizzes because I was, when you're reading pages and not absorbing anything, you're just kind of flipping. It was The Grapes of Wrath. Now, what she did was she went out and this is going to be the very early 2000s, 2000 or 2001, like the very beginning of that decade. And she went out and got the books on tape, the actual books on tape, the cassette tapes for me, and said, if you're having trouble with the language, the dialect that's used in the writing of the book, listen along and read along and get the vibe. And I did exactly that. And it would go on to become one of my favorite books that I read in my schooling. And, to this day, always look back on that one. The movie itself, we saw it in class. I never count those high school viewings as any kind of substantial viewing because you're viewing with the whole crew of students who probably aren't paying attention anyway. And I, like you, Tom, kind of revisited this one for the AFI 100. It's something I had always, I want to say I was avoiding it, but I was saving it. I think saving it for the right mood, the right time for me to kind of go back there because it is a special entity for me. And probably about 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, viewed it. And, much like you guys, impacted me in a new way as well.
So what is this movie about?
Yeah, I needed a sip of scotch for that one. This is a heavier question than some of the ones we've had in the past that I've been a part of.
In a word, poverty.
Well, it's not just poverty. It's the failure of the American dream. Up until this time, until Steinbeck kind of exposed this, everybody, you work hard, you advance, and you become something in this country. And Steinbeck showed that people were not successful, that there was great flaws in the capitalist society, which is one of the reasons why there was threats of this being communist, and Steinbeck was considered a communist for a while, and on and on and on. And if you look back in American history, the argument could be made that Franklin Roosevelt, through the New Deal, actually saved capitalism. Because if the country doesn't fix capitalism, it becomes a socialist or communist state.
This is a big question here for this one, because I do think that this is a lot, and maybe the right approach is, as you did, Tom, is kind of just take it with a direct central term. I look at this one, if I take an attempt to break it down in a sentence or two, I look at this as a movie about community and communities, not just ability, but almost duty to serve as the checks and balances for the entities that are governing it. And as difficult as that may be, as large of an obstacle as it may be, it is our obligation as people, as Americans, to come together and support each other and create a bond between us and whatever we might be being impoverished with.
The reason I start with something as, I guess, sweeping as just a word, poverty, I do think my dad is somewhat right, but it's in multifacets. Within the course of the movie, you're getting the breakdown of their American dream twice, but then it's an overall feeling of what do we really want America to be? In a way, this is very closely on the heels of the actual book release, because I want to say the book was in 1939. The movie's less than a year later. So in some ways, I wonder if they're filming this almost as soon as the book came out, basically.
Yeah, it's 39 and 40. You nailed that right on the head.
But in many ways, and this will be reflected probably later on in Classicness, the film still is trying to attack in us what do we want this country to be? What is the promise of America exactly? Is it prosperity? Is it a contented living? Often the American dream is associated with a quote unquote better life. Well, what does that mean? And I think that's the central question to the entire film. What exactly does better life mean?
Well, in this particular case, one of the things that they were taught that you noted is the first time they really live in proper sanitation, a stable environment, is when the government is overseeing it. It's leveling the playing field. It's preventing wealthy industrialists or farmers or whoever you want to call it from being able to abuse the impoverished. And once that happens, then they're able to take their own responsibility. Does it guarantee success and their own future? No. But what it does do is it levels the playing field and gives the individuals there an opportunity to succeed that they otherwise couldn't. They were constantly behind the eight ball.
And I don't want this to turn into a complete politics discussion, which it very easily and invariably could. I think there's a lot of a political philosophy behind the approach of this book and the movie. Analogies that are told throughout have a very distinct push towards a political aim of what they think the country is supposed to be. But by that same token, I can't expect that everybody finds that everybody should be able to do well within the country. Now, is the better life the fact that everybody is supposed to do well? Is it that you have the opportunity to do well? I mean, I guess I don't know.
Well, think of it this way, okay? There's a reason why LBJ, who considered Steinbeck his favorite author, recruited him to be his speechwriter for the Great Society.
I do think the material itself and the movie and Ford's interpretation of the source material does a good job of asking questions rather than giving definitive answers and painting the main family in it as a source of what the future might bring. And a lot of that comes down to the ending, in my interpretation of it, at least. And using something as specific as communism, or, you know, because I think even at one point in the movie, Tom Joad goes, everyone keeps saying red. What is red? I took that as them saying, like, you know, you may be pointing this material we're discussing right now to what's specifically going on in the world right now, but we're just asking sociological questions and pertaining them to what is happening around us, rather than saying this is the way it should be, this is the way it shouldn't be. That's what I like about the film, is that I don't find it to be so definitive in what it's saying, even though it is making bold images and bold segments to it.
Certainly, and I think allegory lends itself to that. But by the same token, allegory and not direct statements also lends itself for people co-opting it for whatever message or means they want to interpret out of it.
I've spent my entire life, my career, fighting for what I believe is injustice, you know, championing the little guy against the government or the wealthy or whatever. It's what I do for a living. And every time I watch this film, I forget how much it just makes me want to jump out into the screen and start just trying to lead these people to the promised land, because I'm just so disgusted by the way they're being treated. And it never fails. It struck a chord with me when I read the book. And every time I watch the movie, it's the same thing. It's that deep-seated feeling of injustice that permeates through my soul, that I just constantly feel I need to help right the wrong.
So let's move topics just slightly to John Ford. Obviously, he's at the center of a lot of what's going on with this movie and its adaptation. He follows this up with being, I think, the only back-to-back Best Director winner of all time. The following year, with a movie that I think has unjustly been criticized, How Green Is My Valley. But it is this very similar kind of tale of the working man, of the working class, of trying to make statements as to understanding the greater atmosphere of what it is to be a hardworking blue-collar type of folk. He won for The Informer, which is about Irish politics and the Civil War going on there. He wins for The Quiet Man, which is about an American moving to Ireland. He wins Best Director for this, and he wins Best Director for How Green Is My Valley, about a Welsh mining town. But most people remember him most for his Westerns. So I think that there is a disconnect between Ford's possibly more personal work and the stuff that he's most famous for. And where do you think that disconnect, especially with somebody who is rightly so revered within the industry, is?
I'll probably start with genre. Genre and popularity can merge and create a big wave. And I think that's the case in the Westerns, particularly at that time. So that probably helped him create a name for himself. Working alongside John Wayne might do that. That's why I think maybe those movies are a little more in the zeitgeist than something like The Informer or How Green Is My Valley, two really good movies. But, so is Stagecoach and a lot of the others too. He has some great films. He also worked a lot. I mean, if you look at his filmography, he's pumping out 3 movies a year in the 30s and the 40s. That probably allowed him to explore his creative flex, whatever he needed to do there. I know when he was honored for his Lifetime Achievement Award, they asked him if he wanted to do a viewing of any film he wanted for everyone to see and just say, let this. And he chose How Green Is My Valley as the film that screened at his ceremony honoring him. So I think these types of movies are a little more personal for him and then have that personal touch. Quiet Man, How Green Is My Valley, and Grapes of Wrath.
I remember an interview that Sir Patrick Stewart did. He was well known for doing Star Trek, but Star Trek did something which enabled him to do what he really loved doing. He made enough money off of Star Trek that he could do small independent films. He could do theater. He could do the Christmas Carol on the stage in Washington, D.C. For John Ford, he did Westerns because people loved them and they were highly successful. But I think to some extent, it gave him the latitude to do the projects that he was passionate about. I mean, he did the great Westerns. There's no question they were great Westerns. But I think that ultimately, some of these films are the ones that really connected to him more. But again, I think it's a matter of he had that opportunity to do them only simply because he was willing to make Westerns that were very popular and made a lot of money, but were still quality films.
I think you can definitely feel the level of personal touch in How Green Is My Valley. It's one of the reasons that I've been a defender from most comers on that film, because it feels to me to be such a personal movie for him. There's a quietness, there's a reservedness, there's a sadness that's a part of it. And I think you can very much feel that still, though, in this movie. It's just in a different way, and it feels a little bit more disconnected comparatively. That being said, I still think that there are these moments of simple emotion that he is able to get to, simple conversations that are between people, set pieces that are designed with an emotional tone in mind. While the Westerns are exciting and they're action-packed and they're just going to be generally more popular, from an objective standpoint, is The Grapes of Wrath potentially better than Stagecoach? I mean, I'll leave that up to interpretation, but I probably think so.
Over at Best Picture Cast, we rank the Best Picture winners every 15 movies or so that we cover. And How Green Was My Valley was a movie that we covered. And I, like you, Tom, am a big defender of it, and had my cohorts asking if I was all right mentally, or what substance was I on, with how high I had it ranked at times. But you hit the nail on the head with the emotionality of it and the connection to, because that's a novel too. So we're also adapting there. And these two films in back-to-back years, coming right off of Stagecoach too. So you have 3 years in a row there with those three. If you love this movie, if you love Grapes of Wrath, I implore you to go and watch How Green Is My Valley as a partner piece with it, because there's so much about the family unit. Grapes of Wrath is a movie where they're displaced and they're forced to move off into a new place, where you have How Green's My Valley, the lead character is rooted where he's in, and his family gradually moves away, either through immigration or through, their lives growing older or illness or however it may be. So the two stories being told in back-to-back years is very, very powerful for me. And these are just two movies I'll revisit throughout the course of my life for sure.
I will say, in my most recent publishing of my 4th annual Best Picture rankings, as we add a new one every year, How Green Was My Valley is my number 40.
Okay, pretty good.
So a lot higher than the average person. However, Rebecca, that did beat out The Grapes of Wrath, is currently 22.
Yeah, and I do like that win, to be honest. I like the Rebecca win. I like the Grapes of Wrath director win and the Rebecca picture win. You could have flipped them too, and I would be okay with that. But Rebecca should be recognized. A wonderful film. One of my favorite Hitchcocks.
All right, Dad, are you ready to give some more background on the film? Do you have our plot summary ready for us?
Oh, yes. The Grapes of Wrath, directed by John Ford and based on John Steinbeck's novel, follows the Joad family, struggling to survive during the Great Depression. After being evicted from their Oklahoma farm, they journey west to California in search of work and a better life. Led by Tom Joad, Henry Fonda, the family faces hardship, exploitation, and disillusionment as they encounter the harsh realities of migrant labor. Despite suffering immense loss, their resilience endures, with Ma Joad, Jane Darwell, embodying the family's unwavering hope. The film is a poignant exploration of poverty, injustice, and the strength of the human spirit.
Thank you. Did you know? Prior to filming, producer Daryl F. Zanuck sent undercover investigators out to the migrant camps to see if John Steinbeck had exaggerated about the squalor and unfair treatment meted out there. He was horrified to discover that Steinbeck had actually downplayed what went on in the camps. Did you know? John Steinbeck loved the movie and was particularly enamored with the performance of Henry Fonda as Tom Joad, feeling that he perfectly encapsulated everything he wanted to convey with this character. He said that Henry Fonda as Tom Joad made him, quote, believe my own words. The two became good friends, and indeed, Fonda did a reading at Steinbeck's funeral. Did you know? John Ford banned all makeup and perfume from the set on the grounds that it was not in keeping with the tone of the picture. Did you know? According to Henry Fonda, John Ford preferred only one take and little or no rehearsal to catch the most spontaneous moment. For the key climactic final scene between Tom and Ma, Ford didn't even watch the rehearsal. When the time came to shoot, Ford led Fonda and Jane Darwell through the silent action of the scene, preventing them from starting their lines until the two actors were completely in the moment. It was done in a single take, and Fonda said on screen it was, quote, brilliant. Did you know? The pro-union stance of the film led to both John Steinbeck and John Ford being investigated by Congress during the McCarthy Red Scare era for alleged pro-communist leanings. And with that, we will take our first break, and we'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 254th episode, we welcome back 5-time club member and my sister, Allison Duncan, to discuss one of the most celebrated and revolutionary animation films of the last half century, Toy Story from 1995. Directed by John Lasseter, written by Joss Whedon, Andrew Stanton, Joel Cohen, different Joel Cohen, and Alex Sokolow. Music by Randy Newman, starring Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, Annie Potts, John Ratzenberger, Don Rickles, Wallace Shawn, and Jim Varney. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you.
That's REELGOOD.
And I was noting this ahead of time before we started the recording of the show, but last week we did Aaron Brockovich, which was scored by Thomas Newman. This week we are covering The Grapes of Wrath, which is scored by Alfred Newman. And next week we will be covering Toy Story, which is scored by Randy Newman. So we're living in the Newman era.
I love it.
Hello, Newman.
Hello, Newman.
So before we get too much further, Kieran, what is up with you over at the BPC?
Yes, Best Picture cast. We are in the wake of Oscar season, so we're done with all our Oscar content. It really felt like a gauntlet this year. I'm really happy to be done appointment viewing 2024 films. But, you know, I got a good amount out of what was there at our fingertips this year. So go back and check out all our Oscar coverage, rank all the Best Picture winners. We go through all the acting nominations. All that is still, even though the Oscars are behind us, it's all still relevant as far as the analysis goes. We've also released an episode, a movie that you guys covered somewhat recently, or at least in the past calendar year, Forrest Gump.
Yes, we covered it for its 30th anniversary last summer.
Yeah, it was a real good conversation. Had fun with it. It's a throwback in runtime. I think it's nearly 4 hours long, and we had a blast talking that one. So Forrest Gump is out, and then the week that this comes out, we will have released our It Happened One Night episode. So getting a little Capra in the mix too. We have Coda coming up as well. So good things on the horizon here, although horizon's not in the middle for us here at Best Picture Cast. It's anywhere but the middle.
As always. And
Yes.
as it should be. All right. A little bit of housekeeping, just in case anybody had not noticed, and simply for my own, I guess, let's say navel gazing. I've been putting all of our... You've never heard that term, Dad?
No.
It's a first for me too. So
That's a common one on all of the podcasts I listen to. It's basically looking inward phraseology. But anyway, sure, we'll introduce that one. But for anybody that's curious, I have curated a bunch of different genre lists and decade lists, as well as the master greatest movie of all time list. It's all on our show's Letterboxd. So if you want to check that out, I have those broken down by all of these various different categories, such as when we put out Aaron Brockovich last week, I updated the legal dramas like genre. I think it only has like 8 movies in it right now, but you can check
have
that
them
out.
ranked based on their Gmote score.
Correct.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. I'll be all over that. That's good doom scrolling. I'll adopt that easy.
There's like 25 different lists that I have on there, I want to say.
Very cool.
Need a life.
They're not hard to make because you just look at the master list and then come back to it after the fact. And trust me, given my schedule and I'm able to still do these every week, what are you really complaining about?
Oh, okay. Whatever.
And that tag for your Letterboxd is?
It is at Gmote Podcast, like
Okay,
everything
there
else
we
we
go.
have. So it's very consistent on that front. Thankfully, nobody stole that from us, even though there was someone at one time who stole the. So we're just greatest movie of all time podcast. We're not the greatest movie of all time podcast.
Bastards.
But there's a list of the best epic movies of all time, according to the Stanley Rubric, the best or the top rated movies of the 80s, top rated best picture rankings, according to what we've covered from the Gmote list so far, greatest comedies. I think we do have a horror rankings of the ones that we've done. I recently also, when we covered La Dolce Vita, did a top ranked non-English language films that we've covered so far. 6, in case you're wondering.
Thank God there's no crossover genre where you can display that you have Waterboy ranked ahead of Unforgiven.
Someone still sore about that?
Yeah. I wasn't on either episode either. I was driving my car and almost crashed it listening to the
I think both of those were well before we knew you, to be quite honest.
Probably in the beginning of my first couple appearances. Those are probably some of the early ones I listened to.
Yeah, I would say so. Currently, I will say that we do have 6 films on our greatest Christmas movies rankings. So there's that. So I even have it broken down by seasonal stuff. But just in case anybody's looking for a little extra flair and didn't know it was there. But anyway, back to the show. Dad, we left off at best performance. Who do you have down?
I have Henry Fonda.
God damn it. Every freaking week, I try and guess what you're not going to do, and then we still end up with the same freaking pick.
I think Henry Fonda, this may be his best film. I think he deserved the Oscar that year over Stewart.
I would probably agree, yeah. Especially because Jimmy Stewart, to me, in that film is probably actually a supporting character, but I'd have to
Yeah.
rewatch Philadelphia Story again.
Yeah. So I have Fonda. I just think his portrayal, he was Tom Joad. Every time I watch him, I lose. I mean, he is the embodiment of the character.
This probably comes in at number 3 for me in his all-time repertoire or list, behind Once Upon a Time in the West and 12 Angry Men, which are probably tied for me as far as his performances. But he's got a quiet strength, a reservation, a resilience in the character that needs to be at the front of this entire thing. He becomes the strength of the family unit that his mother is relying upon, and then she has to kind of absorb it in the end, which is kind of an odd turn to end the film.
My best performance is John Ford. This is a heavy task here, adapting this thing right after it came out and making it last as long as it did. You know, I don't know if John Ford was thinking about this thing lasting 100 years as or the hopes for it to last 100 years as he was making it, but it certainly it comes off that way. I mean, this thing is filmed flawlessly. It's put together in such a way that you are living with these people on their journey. The man knew how to film a road trip movie. There's no doubt about that, between the Stagecoach and this in back-to-back years. I just think it's a wonderfully directed film. It's a great Oscar win. And if you're looking for what John Ford's all about, this is probably the place you should go first, I would think. For me.
I'm not going to disagree. I have a special bias towards The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, but other than that, I'm not going to disagree. Best secondary performance, I have John Carradine as Jim Casey. I know this is a little bit more of a nuanced pick, but he goes from being, in some ways, kind of a bystander, someone who's sworn off his own ideology, to one who adopts a new one and kind of convinces Tom to come along with him. And so I think he becomes, in some ways, the conscience of the movie. And he has to live a little bit in the background, but be very likable and understandable. And I feel like the character has actually aged very well in our more secular modern history, where we've kind of foregone a lot of social attachments to religion. That this person who's trying to figure it out, he kind of almost in a way represents a lot of the people that are lapsed religious people trying to figure out, what ideology do I really want to define my life? And so because of that, I thought he played it excellently in never too much being in one direction or the other, always sitting on kind of the fence, but never putting it so far in one direction that you couldn't follow him as the conscience because of the questions that are being asked.
John Carradine's a wonderful actor, and that's a great call. I, however, went with Jane Darwell. She wins the Oscar, so it's certainly not unsung, but she is given the task of having to perform that coda after we say goodbye to Tom Joad. And it's hard to make that count to the level that she does, and to deliver the speech she does at the end after one of the more, I hate to overuse the word iconic, but one of the more iconic speeches in film and in modern literature, if we want to put it that way too. Jane Darwell just delivers wonderfully, and it's a good Oscar win. I do love Miss Danvers in Rebecca, and it stings that she didn't win in that one too. But Jane Darwell definitely deserved an Oscar win in this, and it's a great performance as Ma Joad.
I think you could say that each one of the family members represents a certain emotion that is being conveyed on screen that you're having to kind of ping between. So I talked about Carradine being the conscience of the film. You could talk very much about Tom being the resilience of the film, but Ma is the sentimentality, the emotionality behind the family unit, and she has to take on Tom's persona by the end, the resilience of it. So I do think that there is something to be said. I think her performance was phenomenal. not having watched a lot of other 1940 films, I can't say without a doubt that she was the deserved winner, because I can think of, who's the actress from Rebecca that plays the evil...
She plays Mrs. Danvers.
Yeah.
The actress's name I should have.
Well,
I'll
either
get it
way,
for you in a sec.
like that one would have also been a very deserving performance for me, but overall, still a spectacular job.
Judith Anderson is the actress's name.
Thank you.
For me, it's Ford. I actually think this may be Ford's best film. I'd have to watch all of them again kind of in a row to determine, but this one just really, this time I watched it, it really struck a chord with me more than I think the previous 2 times I'd seen it.
Have you seen How Green Is My Valley?
I don't think I've seen the whole thing. I've seen parts.
Ooh.
I know I watched it with Sarah during the pandemic.
I need to watch it, I know. But so I have Ford as my secondary simply because, yeah, I enjoy Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. I enjoy The Searchers. I enjoy a lot of Ford's work.
Did you just say you enjoyed The Searchers?
Well, as much as you can, yes.
Well, I was going to say that's going to go against your entire history of discussing The Searchers ever on this show. You've always said it doesn't quite hit me.
Well, now going back and letting it sit for a while, it's a really good film.
I'll have to confess to needing to rewatch that too, because that certainly didn't hit me either the first time I saw it. It was a bit of a drag for me, but I do owe it a revisit because of its acclaim.
I agree. I would be very much in the same camp. It was, okay, I guess I don't get why this is so significant to people. And even excusing the rather overt racism of the time, which, okay, I mean, it was period accurate in some ways. That being said, it is kind of a challenging, dense film to try and really dig into. And I can understand why film people that love discussion and breaking stuff down and whatever else would like it. But I also don't understand why that becomes the seminal John Ford film comparative to some of these other more personal works. But again, we digress into a topic that we've covered already a little bit tonight. Most charismatic, just because I found him funny and likable, I'm going to go with Charlie Grapewin for Grandpa.
I was going to create a category for least favorite performance, that he would be. Grandpa's getting that. I just find him to be one of the most annoying characters in 40s film, but that's just me. It's just a me thing. Certainly there's charisma there.
Would it have made any difference for you if he had teeth?
Maybe not. I don't know. I'm gonna grab those grapes right off and suck them. Oh, come on. He's going for it. God bless him.
Well, at least you got the reprieve very early on in the film.
For me, most charismatic is Jane Darwell. I mean, every time she was in the shot, you were just drawn to her. For an actress who's heavy set, not overly attractive, she just had a ability to just capture your eye and your heart. It's seldom that you can find somebody who has that ability to be so mesmerizing, at least as far as I'm concerned.
I don't know if I'm breaking any rules or anything, any Gmote statutes or anything with this one, but I'm going to go for it. I went this way, and part of it has to do with the proximity of the novel to the release of the film. I went John Steinbeck here for this, just for creating this world that mirrored the realities that were going on. You know, I didn't even know about the Selznick going to the camps thing that you dropped in the Did You Knows, Tom, which is wild. And to create a world like this, to allow someone like Ford to take the ball and run with it, for Henry Fonda to take the ball and run with it, and all that, to me, it's similar to like the Crichton Spielberg Jurassic Park situation, where he's kind of still writing the writing of the screenplay and the writing of the novel are so close to each other that there's Crichton's fingerprints on the film. And I felt that way with this. So I wanted to shout out Steinbeck as charismatic.
Or for that matter, Spielberg's finest film, Lincoln, with Doris Kearns Goodwin.
There you go.
Said no one. Anyway,
you said you just finished watching Gandhi, so you're just you're grasping for anything right now.
No, do not come in here and try and insult Gandhi.
Oh my God. Come on. I will.
Gandhi is a wonderful film, a work of art, and should not be included with all of the disasters of the 1980s.
Oh, give me the Searchers. I'll take the Searchers.
I am going to defend Gandhi till the end of time.
Don't tell me you have Gandhi ranked ahead of How Green Was My Valley.
All right. So since you did ask the question, I will pull it up just to see. I don't think I have Gandhi ahead of How Green Was My Valley, only because How Green Was My Valley is an excellent film that should be given praise. But I know I have Gandhi well ahead of when most people have it on their list. So let's see here. I have Gandhi at 67.
We have not covered Gandhi at Best Picture Cast because I haven't been able to bring myself to rewatch it yet. So I'm letting the clock count down till it's Squid Games and there's only one left, and it's me and
its most redeeming quality was it was not Chariots of Fire from the previous year.
I will say it is the first film that I have watched for 1982's prep work for the Revisionist Almanac. I believe that's his September, maybe his October episode. I can't remember. Either way, it's going to be at or near the top of the list for quite a while until I watch Rocky 3.
A great chapter of that wonderful series, Rocky 3. Big Rocky 3.
The film that I'm going to start with is my favorite film from that year, which is Tootsie.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say my favorite years.
That's an excellent film.
Tootsie's great, yeah.
My favorite year is an excellent film.
I mean, you have a lot of like deep cuts that people love as cult favorites in that one. The Thing. You have First Blood, which I almost decided to go to today.
Love First Blood.
I have never seen it.
One of the biggest drop-offs in an original to a sequel is First Blood and First Blood Part 2. As far as great movie and abominable movie.
You know it was going to be bad when they missed the boat on calling it Second Blood. Anyway, moving on. Let's go to Best Scene. I have 5 nominees here. First, Coming Home. So Tom being welcomed back by his family once he gets technically to his Uncle John's farm. But there's also, you could incorporate the scene where he goes to the house for the first time and nobody's there. Then I have The Diner, which is Grandpa trying to, I guess it's not Grandpa, it's Ma Joad is trying to buy the 2 children the candy. Then I have Police Interference, which is the scene where the cop decides that he's going to rough up the guy who requires a license or is at least making good points. He's going to break it up and then eventually shoots the woman in the camp. I have Casey's Demise, and I have obviously the final, well, more or less final scene, Farewell, which is the, as was mentioned before, iconic Tom and Ma scene. So, any to add?
I had that I would add is Grandpa Joad's death, and that was really the death of the family.
Yeah, you could. Grandma's Joad's death is great too. That's another awesome Ma Joad moment. Where she has to kind of announce that Grandma died while they're viewing that great shot of the overlook of California.
I have to say, because I remember this distinctly from our vacation in 2000, so 25 years ago, that Arizona still does the border crossing. Do you have any plants or vegetables with you?
Yes.
Bringing you with it. I don't remember that being in this movie, but that's such a weird thing. When I cross over into Minnesota, they're not asking me whether I brought cheese or beer.
Desert life hits different, man. Desert life hits different.
Okay. Anyway, moving on. Any other scenes to nominate? All right, hearing none. Out of these 6, Coming Home, Grandpa's Death, The Diner, Police Interference, Casey's Demise, and Farewell, what is the best scene?
I just had a little trouble litigating where I put things with this, because to me the most indelible scene is kind of the best scene also, and I think that we know what that is as far as like what scene survives this film the most. But I will We'll highlight a different as best just for the sake of including another one and in its importance to the film. The police shakedown with where he calls the guy the agitator and wants to tie him to the robbery, and then the gun goes off. From a narrative standpoint, that scene is super essential for the viewer. It creates this action, this chaos, this immorality in the middle of this thing that leaves you really, really shook. So I do think in a film that's, I mean, I actually happen to think this is paced pretty well for a 2-hour, 10-minute movie. But I could see how someone might be yawning a little bit as we're trudging along here. That scene is placed brilliantly, and it does so much to service the viewing experience. So I highlighted that as my best. My Indelible, I will tip the cap to when we get there.
I will go with that as my favorite scene, the police interference. And it's a weird one to have as favorite scene, because normally we just say favorite is like most enjoyable, the one that you would rewatch on YouTube for some unknown reason. But for me, it's favorite because it is the most unjust moment of the film. As many bad things that have happened to them, some of them are just simply by circumstance, but this is where you're putting a direct face on corruption. So to me, that's why it's favorite. But as far as best and most indelible are going to be the same for me, and I have the diner. The kindness showed by the owner of the diner, the road truckers, other people, that is in such contrast to the guys who are at the filling station that look down on them comparatively.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that moment for what it actually says about people. You can choose the kind response, or you can choose the conceited response. And so in some ways it's adding to the film, again, the question of what kind of country, what kind of American dream do you want it to be?
My best scene is the farewell, and it is also my most indelible moment. But again, I agree with you, Tom. The diner is the most, or is my favorite scene, because it does show that there is some semblance of humanity. No matter how bad things get, some people just have an ability to see beyond their own selves and be, magnanimous,
Altruistic, charitable.
to see pain and try to help resolve it. It's the one point in the film where no matter how bad things are, you get the feeling that there is some semblance of humanity left.
Indelible for me is the same as Dana there with the farewell. To me, it's just that the exchange between Ma and Tom. I mean, it's a Bruce Springsteen / Rage Against the Machine song, for God's sake. It survives this movie and the novel brilliantly. And to me, that's the indelible and could easily be said as the best scene.
We've already covered my favorite and indelible moments, and I think we've covered everybody's indelible moments at this point, but favorite scenes for either of you.
Dana, did you give your favorite?
Yeah, I said the diner.
Yes, and I watched this film on Glorious VHS here. This is the Fonda collection, from Keystone Video. I think I picked it up on eBay for about $1.86, a little more probably what it would have cost to beat a day for a peach picking there in California. I had a great time watching that last night, and the scene that brought me to tears was the scene that you both have brilliantly highlighted already, is that diner scene with the loaf of bread and the candy, the way that it's orchestrated between the owner saying, just give it to him for that amount. It's 2-day-old bread, give it to him. And the diner worker kind of playing hard nosed, but then when it's her turn to say how much the candy's worth, it's 2 for a penny. And then the truck drivers coming in and paying on top of what that they're owed on top of it. Is when we go back to what the movie was about, for me, this was community. This was society taking care of itself in tough times. I was in tears watching it, and it was my favorite scene of the entire film by far. So I'm super pumped that both of you guys had that on your list too. It's just brilliant, wonderful.
I will say I did cry at Gandhi this afternoon too.
Did you get sand in your eyes?
No. But that looks like a good spot for our second break. We'll be right back. No, when they finally convinced Gandhi to eat.
Okay.
Seriously. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our master greatest movies of all time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmote podcast and find it as the top entry on the greatest movie of all time podcast show page. That has the grades we've done so far for all 228 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. And also, adding on the previous conversation, that is also now featured on our show Letterboxd, or at least has been for quite a while, but I don't know if people knew it was there. So there you go. That is updated regularly. So,
Okay.
But, Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes. Dwayne Wiggins, 64, American musician, Tony, and songwriter, Feels Good. Pamela Bach, 61, American actress, Baywatch. Peter Engel, 88, American television producer, Saved by the Bell, City Guys, Hang Time. Felicia Monet Bear, 83, American television producer, All My Children. Bill Darr, 64, English television producer and writer. Dead Ringers, The Now Show, Spitting Image.
And one last addition to the list that came in yesterday for us, Simon Fisher Becker, 63, British actor. He was most known, at least publicly, for the Harry Potter films and Doctor Who, but was also a renowned stage actor in England. And so we remember these here fondly for their contributions with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. All right, let's go to best funniest lines. So I will start with Ma Joad. Rich fellas come up and they die, and their kids ain't no good and they die out, but we keep a-comin'. We're the people that live. They can't wipe us out, they can't lick us. We'll go on forever, Pa, because we're the people.
Tom Joad. Seems like the government's got more interest in a dead man than a live one.
Casey, I wouldn't pray just for an old man that's dead, because he's all right. If I was to pray, I'd pray for the folks that's alive and don't know which way to turn.
Tom Joad. If there was a law they was working with, maybe we could take it, but it ain't the law. They're working away our spirits, trying to make us cringe and crawl, taking away our decency.
Ma Joad. Well, Pa, a woman can change better than a man. A man lives sorta, well, in jerks. Baby is born or somebody dies, and that's a jerk. It gets a farm or loses it, and that's a jerk. With a woman, it's all in one flow, like a stream. Little eddies and waterfalls, but the river, it goes on. Women look at it that way.
Al Joad, ain't you gonna look back, Ma? Give the old place a last look? Ma Joad, we're going to California, ain't we? All right, then let's go to California. Al Joad, that don't sound like you, Ma. You never was like that before. Ma Joad, I never had my house pushed over before. Never had my family struck out on the road. Never had to lose everything I had in life.
All right. We come to the final speech, and the role of Tom Joad will be played by yours truly. The role of Ma Joad will be played by Kieran B. I've been thinking about us too, about our people living like pigs and good rich land laying fallow, or maybe one guy with 1 million acres and 100,000 farmers starving, and I've been wondering if all our folks got together and yelled,
"Oh, Tommy, they'd drag you out and cut you down just like they done to Casey."
They'd drag me anyways. Sooner or later, they'd get me for one thing, if not for another. Until then...
Tommy, you're not aiming to kill nobody.
No, Ma, not that. That ain't it. It's just, well, As long as I'm an outlaw anyways, maybe I can do something. Maybe I can just find out something. Just scrounge around and maybe find out what it is that's wrong and see if they ain't something that can be done about it. I ain't thought it out all clear, Ma. I can't. I don't know enough.
How am I going to know about you, Tommy? Why, they could kill you. I'd never know. They could hurt you. How am I going to know?
Well, maybe it's like the Casey says. A fellow ain't got a soul of his own, just little piece of a big soul. The one big soul that belongs to everybody. Then
what?
Then it don't matter. I'll be around in the dark. I'll be everywhere. Wherever you look, wherever there's a fight, so hungry people can eat. I'll be there. Wherever there's a cop beating up a guy, I'll be there. I'll be in the way guys yell when they're mad. I'll be in the way kids laugh when they're hungry and they know supper's ready. And when the people are eating the stuff they raise and living in the houses they build, I'll be there too.
I don't understand it, Tom Duncan.
Me neither, Ma, but just something I've been thinking about. End scene.
End scene. Nice. I think I used 3 different accents in that. That's all right.
Covering all the regions of Oklahoma.
That's right. I covered Georgia, Louisiana, Oklahoma.
Maybe a little New York.
Southern, yeah, Seaford, New York.
Little Long Island.
Yeah.
All right. Any remaining quotes?
I did have one. Dana, did you have one? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Tom Joad takes no nerve to do something. Ain't nothing else you can do.
Ma Joad. I ain't never gonna be scared no more. I was, though. For a while, it looked as though we was beat. Good and beat. Looked like we didn't have nobody in the whole world but enemies. Like nobody was friendly no more. Made me feel kind of bad and scared. Like we was lost and nobody cared.
Talking about multiple accents.
Okay.
We're getting them all out today. It's good. I'm out.
I am out as well, so.
I'm done.
All right. So then let's move to the Stanley rubric. Legacy is up first. This is a measure of the legacy of the film. Roughly after the initial 5 years that it came out, so from 1945 to today, what is the legacy of the film? We split this 5 points and 5 points, divided evenly for a total of 10 between the industry and the audience. Dad, would you like to go first or second?
Second.
All right. I think I'm going to put down a few of the markers that are pretty well mainstays on this one. I don't quite have it at a 5 for the industry because while it is highly rated by the AFI, I don't think that this is universally thought of in the same way that like The Searchers is, which is a much more prominent film, probably ranks higher on several lists, is the more renowned John Ford film. And so I gave it a 4.5 because I think there's a high level of respect, but also within the industry, how many people are sitting down to watch The Grapes of Wrath versus watching several of the other Ford films? I just don't know if it's quite at that level, despite the fact that I think this is actually possibly better shot than The Searchers. And I know that's an odd take, but anyway. But the point at which I think we normally argue about with Legacy is always its impact on the audience. While I do think that there are quite a number of film fans, cinephiles that have probably seen this movie, and that makes up for the general population having no chance or no interest in seeing this film, because of the book's overall place within the American literature pantheon, how well it's placed within high school literature classes, I think the name recognition and maybe even to a degree the subject material helps people to kind of roughly at least know about this. So I'm going to split the difference a little bit here and go with a 2.5 and be maybe a little bit generous in my own mind. I have a 7.
Well, I have a 4.5 for the industry for the same general arguments you've made, which is it's held in high regard, but it's not held as in high regard for Ford as other films. And for the public, it's a forgotten film. If you mention Grapes of Wrath, people will remember the book. The fact that Steinbeck won a Nobel Prize for literature in primary fashion because of Grapes of Wrath, to some lesser extent, Mice and Men. And I would say that not too many people are going to remember that there is a film of the book. I'm at a 2, so I'm at a 6.5 overall. And I think it's because those that do know there's a film hold it in very high regard.
Okay, I'm at a 4.5 for industry, so I'm echoing Dana there. This isn't quite holy ground for the industry, but I think it's pretty darn close. You have the director who has won the most director awards. This is probably the most recognizable of those 4 wins. I look at Henry Fonda, and we have the whole makeup Oscar of it all with On Golden Pond, that probably recalling times of 1940 where much of the industry feels he should have won over the Jimmy Stewart performance in Philadelphia Story, which is not a good movie. Sorry for that hot take. I think this is pretty Teflon in the industry. Not a 5, because it's not like the first tier. It's not like that first upper echelon of movies, the Wizard of Oz's and the Casablancas and whatnot, that people will go to first, Lawrence of Arabia, Godfather, and so on. But it's close. It's really, you're not going to find anyone in the industry who's casting shade on Grapes of Wrath. And I wouldn't be shocked if you'd see it pop up on a Letterboxd 4 or so as you go along. I'm going to be a little kinder to it with the public. The place I'm going to go with this is the fact that it's still taught in schools today, and still not just taught in schools today, but still also banned in some schools today. It was recently banned in California in a few public schools. So the fact that there's people still saying you can't read this, that shows relevance alone. I mean, you if no one's looking to ban you, you're not very relevant. So the fact that this was banned from some schools in 1939 and is still as late as I think 2023 was banned in some schools. So there's some relevance there for me. So 3.5, because we are talking the film, not the book. The film does kind of go with the book, because, you got to imagine if some schools are shown that they're doing with the film, but it kicks it around. But I can't go too heavy on it, because we can't give the film all the credit that the book gets with the relevance of it being taught and whatnot. So 3.5 for a total of an 8.
All right, so that is a 7.17 average between the three of us. Would expect nothing less from a Kieran episode.
Well, since there's a jab there, I want to throw out. It was made into a Bruce Springsteen song, as I alluded to before, and then a decade later covered by Rage Against the Machine into another popular song too. So the material did live on throughout the time beyond the initial.
Okay. And also the Grapes of Wrath was a VeggieTales like moniker or something that they developed, and there was a Ma and Pa grape in there.
There you go. There's no Quiet Man Fruity Pebbles going on.
Again, I think that has more to do with name association from the book being so widely taught, but fair enough. All right, let's go to impact and significance. This is a measure of the impact and significance of the film within the first 5 years that it originally came out, so roughly 1940 to 1945. What is the impact and significance? We divide this category, like legacy, between the audience and the industry for 5 points each, for a total of 10. Kieran, I'll let you go. Put you on the spot.
Sure. So from the industry, we're looking at a popular novel almost immediately adapted into a director win, as well as a supporting actress win. So it's honored pretty widely there. It's our second John Ford to win Best Director, which at that time, it's not like it hadn't been done. I think maybe Frank Berzaghi had already done it. I also Frank Lloyd, I think, had done it at that point. So it's not like it was like the first time a director won twice, but certainly tipping the cap there the following year when he wins 3 times is more to discuss. So I'm going to go 4.5 again there with industry. Not taking Best Picture, maybe I'll hold back a little bit with a 0.5 there for that. The audience is a little tricky. Did you give the box office numbers before, Tom? I didn't have those available to me.
No, because to be quite honest, the reporting on most films prior to like 1960 are really hard to know as far as what their overall number. And by the time you get back into the 40s, it's near impossible.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
I
don't
did
even know
find
what the
some-
rankings would be necessarily for a film like this on a particular year, because they would show these for like 2 or 3 years traveling around. So it wasn't like the wide releases that were known today.
Yeah, so audience is very tricky. I want to say this is the oldest film I've done here on Gmote.
I believe you are correct.
So because this is such a popular novel, I hate keep giving it credit for the novel, but they came out right alongside each other, so it's hard to not marry the two. I'll give it a 4. I'll give it a 4 for an 8.5 total.
Okay, I'm going to go pretty close to right along with that, except that I'm going to go with a 5 for the industry and a 4 for the public. I think that due to the amount of Oscars that it was nominated for, and this is in an era where there were less Oscars to be handed out, they were more focused on Best Picture, Director. I'm not even sure they quite had, well, obviously they had to have supporting actor and actress in order for Jane Darwell to win, but the wide variety of lower category Oscars just had not really come about yet. I think this is also an era where there were 10 different Best Picture nominees yet.
Yes.
So with that in mind, for it to get as many nominations in like the categories with 5 nominees, and the fact that at the time you had fairly universal critical acclaim, and I do think in a way that the book gave to the film and the film gave to the book, and they were in some ways interchangeable, a Best Director win versus a Pulitzer Prize winning book. I'm going to go with my 9.
All right. I'm going to go with a 4.5 for the industry. The public, the gross receipts is what I went by. And it fell like 12th. So it was not a very popular film. I mean, it was Pinocchio was the big one that year. So people watched it, but it wasn't quite to the same level. So the best I can do is a 3. So I'm at a 7.5.
So that is an 8.33 average between the three of us. Let's go to novelty then. This is a measure of the originality of anything having to do with the film, as well as the execution on that originality. For this one, this is the first film that, much in the same way that the book is kind of revolutionary in depicting kind of working man issues. While I can't say that the Depression wasn't on screen in many ways, because you can even see it in something like It Happened One Night, it's not to the same level where its primary focus is on the Depression and specific historical issues like the Dust Bowl. So on that basis, I give it a 4. On a different side of things, it is a wonderfully shot movie. I think that the adaptation from the book to this does leave an impact. It doesn't take too much away from the book. I think it could have probably been edited down maybe about 10 minutes. There are some laggy points in the film for me where it probably lingers a little bit too long on a few things here or there that I could have done without. But it does a good job of evoking certain emotions within you, creating this question between what kind of American dream do you really want? What is the better life that has been promised? So I think it does a good job on that, but I'm not quite to the mastery level that I think you two will both probably be on. So I'm at a 4 and a 4 for an 8.
For originality, yes, there have been the hard scrabble stories before in film, but I don't think it was to this level, showing the difficulty of the times, how abused and mistreated things were in these people. So I'm at a 4.5 for originality. And again, I think this might be John Ford's best film. I think it's really well shot. I think the story and the pacing is great. There's not a hole that I found. I'm moved and quite taken by this film. And every time I watch it, it seems like it has more of an impact on me. So I'm at a 5 for execution. So I'm at a 9.5 overall.
Originality, geez, we're probably 5 years into the code era at this point, maybe a little bit more. And we're probably about 5 to 7 years away from this being a major problem on the desk of Mr. McCarthy. They kind of got this off a little earlier than it would have been a major problem. I feel like they were threading a needle here a bit with this film and addressing an issue that's kind of was going on at the time as well in a controversial way. Keep going back to Tom's fact about David Selznick visiting those camps.
Yep.
Geez. I think I'm going to give it a 4 with originality.
I'm okay with you adding some level of audacity to it, because I also don't think that in context that I can really point to too many other films that were specifically about this subject matter. There were things that obviously you couldn't depict on screen without showing in some ways what was going on in the Depression. It was just a fact of life that everybody was living through at the time. And much in the same way that, like I said, It Happened One Night has nothing to do with the Depression per se, but you can notice signs of it and the time it was made in that film, even though it's between one guy who's just kind of like a nothing reporter and a woman who's a heiress. But you could still notice the little things within something like that. But this one shone a big, bold light on it. And that's where I would give a certain level of originality to it comparatively, because I don't know if my dad can point to anything of significance where it was pointing to the Depression and saying, here's the lens, here's the mirror on where we're at culturally right now, and this is what you've got to pay attention to.
I would dispute that. And if you want, go ahead.
So provide your example then.
These were the least of the least. There were a lot of people that were struggling during the Great Depression.
Sure.
These people were the forgotten mass. And this is the first time the lens had actually been portrayed or shown on them. There were a lot of people who lived or got through things and survived, but they just didn't have, it wasn't like you had CBS Sunday Morning going out and showing these stories, or you had journalists going and talking to these people in these camps. This is the first time they ever were presented to a large mass of people who did not have to go through the same level of trauma and turmoil. And it took a novelist to show it. It just did not make the story that was going to be on NBC or CBS radio in 1940.
My point with you is that you supposedly gave it a half point off, even though technically you're a half point higher than I was. I was saying that it was original to a 4, because even though it's taking concepts and the environment that we were already in, it was exploring a different part of the subject matter. And you're somehow discounting it because there were other films that were somehow about the subject matter, which I just don't find to be accurate. But anyway, Kieran, you were at a 4 on that, and we forewent your other half of a number here for our tidbit or our aside.
No, that's great conversation too, though. And I'll just throw on, just when I think depression, how it's been portrayed over the years, I kind of just, and this might be a me thing, but I kind of just recall images of big city life and struggles in the city. Getting the picture of the countryside and the struggles in the Dust Bowl and so on is just different as far as depression goes for me. So I credit it a little bit there. But I'm going to segue from this being made in the way it was, the audacity is the word, Tom, you use. And I don't know that another director could have quite gotten away with what Ford was able to get away with here with this. Timing worked a bit for him, and he was just so well respected at this time. And that kind of goes into the technical end of it and the mastery of this film. And, I personally think How Green Was My Valley is the better film. And I still have John Ford work to do. But I would kind of always go to that as his best. John Ford himself kind of did as well. But that being said, everything Dana said about how this thing is shot and how this thing looks, I'm on the same page with. I think this is crafted in a masterful way, and I don't know that you can shoot a movie better at this time. We're a year away from Citizen Kane, but there's tasks required in this movie that are pretty great, and I think it holds up. So it's a 5 there for me with a total of a 9.
All right, so that is an 8.83 average between the three of us. Classicness. This is the most difficult to define category. It's simply, in some ways, how well has the movie aged or not aged? And we usually start now at a 6 instead of a 7, but higher than the baseline because it's usually easier, especially with older movies, to take points off than to give them back or to give points up. But Dad, we usually let you lead this category.
If you want to understand the Great Depression or understand any time in American history where people are mistreated, discounted, forgotten, overlooked, however you want to say it, this is the film. You could watch this film today and it has as much social relevancy as anything. As I'm starting to think about all of the potential harm that could be done by government disruption to people in my own practice, the disabled and people who are sick. Maybe that's what really tugged at my heartstrings watching this film, is to understand how bad things can be by mistreatment and the failure of us collectively through our government to protect and preserve these people. This film speaks. The only thing I could say is it's a little bit outdated simply because of the circumstances. And the fact is that, and this is why, the fact is it doesn't get this bad for the most part now, because of the fact that we as a society said, we're not going to do this anymore. So we have unemployment insurance. We have welfare. We have disability payments. We have the social safety net. So it can't get a perfect 10 for that reason, because it speaks at a time where we didn't have this. So I went with a 9 simply because it ended up making itself irrelevant, because it's so influenced a generation of trying to protect people that it no longer is as bad or is reflective of where it was.
I also come in at a 9 for basically the exact same reasons. I think that the movie is extraordinarily ahead of its time, because while it doesn't get quite to this level of squalor for some, the notion of the working poor, the notion of the homelessness crisis that we're currently having with people displaced and dispossessed in a large way across the country, and frankly in a lot of liberal areas that supposedly pride themselves on the social safety net, I don't find this to be that outdated in that fashion. It's only in the historical context of where the film takes place. And is this relevant, the Dust Bowl and the Depression and things, for a younger generation who's not as familiar with history? And I know that we've now, I think this is like the 3rd straight episode we brought this up with Kieran, where it's like the historical context.
I hate this take you have, but yeah.
Well, but we've heard from people who are teaching this stuff on the ground. A shared friend between the two of us who has specifically said, kids don't know this stuff anymore. They don't have the context for a lot of the things that are going on. So it's not without at least some credibility where it's coming from. I know that offends in some way the sensibilities for those of us that do have the historical context, but I don't project that onto the rest of people, especially since this book is apparently being banned by school districts and other things in the curriculum. So where are you supposed to learn about the Dust Bowl and the Depression and things other than just taglines or words that don't have any actual meaning to people? Like, I think if you said, what is the Great Depression? People will say a few buzzwords about it, and they know roughly the idea of what it was, but they don't understand the squalor and the context behind all of that because of the education system that we currently have. So, all that being said, taking off that point for that reason, I still think the film is poignant from an analogous standpoint. It is very metaphorical, but it's also quite literal for the context that it's currently in. And so that's where I come in at a 9.
Yeah. Well, I'm not arguing with anyone's scores. I have a 9 as well. But just the I can't allow my scores to be affected by how well learned or how well taught 2025 students are across the country. I mean, if you like, kids don't give a shit about World War II anymore. What can we say? Like, it happened. You can read about it. You can study it. If you don't choose to go back and learn about it, then that's fine. That's up to you. But it's historical context is exactly that. They're in the history books. You can skip a chapter or two. If you're not enticed by the Jimmy Carter administration, you can thumb right through that chapter. It's still in the book, though. It's still there. It's part of history, and this is historical fiction that matters and is absolutely there. So,
but again, this is from an objective category, and classicness has to do with how well it relates to the audience who may be receiving it today.
What about the one that's going to receive it tomorrow, though? And
I think that'll be even worse.
It may or may not, but I can't disregard chapters of history because certain sects of our country's education system isn't teaching certain elements of American history. And I'm still not even I'm still getting my head around that even happening. I mean, because I've been in classrooms today too, and I see a lot of this being taught. This book is being taught in schools. This book is being taught in schools. It's being banned in schools, which makes it relevant.
If you don't have any concept that the globe is this really large place where there are other places to go and see and travel and experience and culture and whatever else, how are you supposed to appreciate what travel is or what an airplane will take you to? If you're missing context, how is it as important or as impactful for you? I'm not saying that it couldn't be.
I'm just, when we're discussing an American film, I think it's appropriate to equate it to American history. That's it. If we're talking about a Japanese film, then we can talk about Japanese history or how America understands. I wouldn't, to me, a movie like Parasite, which is talking about South Korean class struggles, I don't think that America's perception of South Korea's class struggles matters. I don't think it does, because we're talking about a Korean film in Korea. It's what the film is speaking to in the society that surrounds it. I don't know.
I think that's in some ways apples and oranges, only from the standpoint of Parasite is still in a modern context. And so I don't think you need to appreciate the historical culture that's part of it in order to appreciate what's there. I think a more relevant film to make the comparison against for Grapes of Wrath is probably like High and Low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But anyway, I don't think we're going to settle this time, and we won't belabor the point. It's an easy 9 math. So
I'm not convincing your Indian listeners or your Pakistani listeners to give a shit about the Dust Bowl. I'm not. That's not my stance. My point is that it is being taught in this country, and American students are required in some classrooms to learn it. It happened. That's it. But please, for the international listeners, don't waste your time with the history of the Dust Bowl. You don't have to. All right. You probably have your own things to be concerned with.
Are we still number 1 in our genre in Singapore?
I think we had dropped to number 3.
Step it up,
this
Singapore.
Will bring us back. The people who are pro Dust Bowl in Singapore.
Okay. With that note, rewatchability.
I almost got you.
If you're watching the video, there was a very, very close spit take.
Yes.
I hope it wasn't good scotch or something that you almost...
Yeah, it would have been scotch out the nose, which is that's an award-winning podcasting movie.
That's kind of like cauterizing.
Not to tell stories that have nothing to do with what we're trying to get through right now, but I'm going to do it
you
anyway.
will anyway.
The first time I did tequila shots, I went back up the nose. That was not fun.
Yeesh.
Yeah, that burned. But anyway, rewatchability. This is for the most part, subjective category that we have. People have made up all sorts of tests to figure out what exactly rewatchability is to them. I've tried to be a little bit more objective with this category, going back to its original roots. And so from that standpoint, I'm going to try and lead this category off just to give us a baseline. I think it takes a little bit of time to really get into its setup, particularly the fact that Tom has to make his way to his home. Then there's kind of a long, somewhat flashback series. They're filmed kind of in an odd way to set up the film. And it doesn't really get into its true action, its journey, the interactions with the family until, 20, 25 minutes in. I also find a lot of the characters hard to invest in at times because there are just simply too many of them. Like, we don't get a large feel for the kids or Rosa Sharon or Uncle John, for that matter, in the way that we probably could in the novel, where it can go into a chapter on each one of them if it so chooses. And the film is already running a little bit long for me. So with that all in mind, I have it at a 4. Now you both can tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I will, but if you care to go.
Oh, yeah, I'll go. Now, I'm going to do a little self-reflection with this one, and I'll equate that in my score, because I'm probably
a
the
little
wrong...
navel gazing.
That just sounds odd to me. I'm probably the wrong guy to have on for this particular category, just because I find films from the 1940s ultra comforting. I love this era of film. It's like a warm blanket for me. I can throw TCM on and any one of these will pop up, and I'll be happy to lean back with a glass of wine and get comfortable and just kind of just be in my safe place. So I don't know what it is. There's just something, there's an aesthetic of it that's very soothing to me. I realize this is probably not a quality that most of society shares. These films are to the average viewer are probably a bit rigid and outdated and a little hard to sync up with. So I will factor that a little bit. And even though this is a personal subjective score, I will equate that a little bit. Tom, great point about the characters. I mean, he made a decision to focus on certain categories when he making this film. The book fleshes out others more. And when we're kind of bringing this family along, there are particular characters that lose out in the shuffle here. I think I'm going to ultimately go with the 0.5, because I mean, I'd be lying if I said that, I'm going to be fired up to crack open a couple cold ones and throw on Grapes of Wrath on a Memorial Day weekend. But this is a movie that I will go back to and I'll visit and have as a part of my life moving forward, as I said at the beginning of the podcast. And it is one that if it were on TCM, there's no way I'm turning it off. So a 6.5, I feel like is fair if I'm considering some of the other films in contention in this genre that I would rewatch, though. It could be talked up to a 7, but I think I'm taking the 0.5 off and saying that this is a bit of a tough sell for the casual viewer. So I gave it a 0.5 off from where I would have gone with a 7.
Before you get to your score, Dad, just for my own satisfaction, the phrase navel gazing comes from ancient Greek words omphalos and skepsis, forming omphaloskepsis, which originally referred to monks who believed deeply naval contemplation led to communion with God. In a modern context, it is used to describe self-absorption, introspection, or a focus on one's own thoughts and problems.
I thought it was just about a belly button fetish.
Yeah, no, I was staring at women in bikinis at the beach. Okay. As we take this wind out of the sail. Pun intended. As I indicated, okay, I've spent a whole life fighting, uphill battle. There are many times where I feel defeated, where It's the scene, which to me is one of the most pivotal scenes in all, is No Country for Old Men, when Tommy Lee Jones is sitting there at the end and he looks back and realizes that he's given his entire life fighting crime, and ultimately crime wins. And he gets dejected. And there are a lot of times that I have the same feeling, which is, what the fuck do I care? I'm tired. I've done as much as I could. It seems like most of the time nobody cares. Nobody seems to have any understanding or why I'm doing it or appreciation, whatever. The most popular book Dale Carnegie wrote was How to Win Friends and Influence People. The other was a book he wrote called How Not to Worry. And in there he commented about, Jesus healed 10 lepers, only one bothered to thank him. Why should you feel like you should be thanked for anything you do if Jesus Christ can't? And I keep telling myself that, but this film has to be on my regular list, especially as I'm getting older and more tired and more run down and more cynical. I need to watch this film on a regular basis just to charge my battery that, yes, I can do something yet. Until my breath is gone and my heart stops beating. And hopefully my family is crying over my dead carcass.
We're going to be listening to Aqualung.
I can keep fighting. And so I have to watch this film. So I'm at a 7.5 because this needs to be on my regular thing. I need to watch this every 6 to 12 months just to keep my perspective that the world can be actually impacted yet.
Well said.
Okay. So with that, because you've said that repeatedly about several films, I'm going to check in with you in a year and see if you've watched it again.
I believe him here. I believe him. It's great. I'll check in again. I got my VHS.
So that is a 6 average between the three of us. For audience score on this one, we had a 72% for Google users and an 88% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us an 8 overall. So to recap the categories, for Legacy, we had a 7.17. For Impact and Significance, we had an 8.33. For Novelty, we had an 8.83. For Classicness, a 9. Rewatchability was a 6. Audience score was an 8. For a final total of 47.33, and currently placing it on our list between Major League and the Grand Budapest Hotel for number 104.
Well, at least it got ahead of Grand Budapest Hotel, is all I can say.
Yeah.
I wonder what John Ford would have thought of Major League.
Well, I don't know about that, but I wonder what he also would have thought of his contemporary, His Girl Friday, placing 2/100ths of a point ahead of it.
Ugh.
But with that being said, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is a full 0.17 ahead of it and currently 6 spots higher on the list.
Okay. I still got to see that.
You haven't seen
Looking
it?
forward to it. No. I'm not. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, enjoy. That is one to open up a couple of cold ones for.
Great.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying you have to watch it in any short time, but if it's still on for Christmas that you haven't watched it, that may be where the suggestion goes.
Okay. All right.
If you disagree with any of our scoring, as usual, you can write us at greatestalltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on any of our socials at GMote Podcast on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok. Or you can find us at RonnieDuncanStudios.com/GMote Podcast. At this point, we have remaining questions. I have 2 here that, for all intents and purposes are basically the only 2 that I could really think of. Where does Tom end up? Although I don't think it really matters. The whole point is that he'll be everywhere. He's symbolic.
No, I know where he ends up. He's either in the Army or the Marines fighting in World War II.
That's probably fair.
I think he's Batman. Living in the shadows. He's not the hero that they want. He's the hero they need.
Number 2, do the Joads survive in California?
Yes.
Okay, so I have two different answers to this, and one is pertaining to the novel and one is pertaining to the film. I think Ford's interpretation of the novel based on the final scene is that the Joads and what the Joads stand for prevail. I think the ending of the film is very positive and uplifting, and I think it's an optimistic ending. I don't necessarily have the same feeling about the novel. That the deleted scene or the omitted scene of the stillborn baby. Spoiler alert for all you clamoring to go out and read the Grapes of Wrath. I think there's
You're clamoring to go read it. Why the fuck are you listening to this show?
Spoiler alert on a 60, 80,
85-year-old film
novel.
a very old, difficult read.
Whose anniversary is this coming week.
We struggled through reading the quotes from the film, let alone the novel here today. But no, it is a great novel. And I think the iconography of this stillborn baby it's pretty dooming. And I think despite her nursing the stranger, I think that reads as we will prevail in the now, but the future is doomed. I think that's there within the text and the subtext there for that. But I think that the film itself is very optimistic.
Again, I think both questions, you're supposed to be left with the metaphor and kind of filling in your own thing. Mm-hmm. It leaves it open-ended very much on purpose.
Yeah.
Because it has to do with the allegory. The future is not yet written, but he gives you allusions to where things are going to go anyway.
I think the Joad's great-grandchild is working in Silicon Valley.
Boy, do I feel bad for them.
And it's much like the film and book that Dana referenced in No Country for Old Men, and that the ending is left open for interpretation. I mean, we just covered that on Best Picture Cast, and literally there were cast members fighting over what the ending meant. Some of them thought it was damning, and some of them thought it was super optimistic. So that's a great material there when you can accomplish that.
All right, so at this point, we're going to do some further navel gazing, and you have my permission to basically tune out at this point if you don't want to just kind of hear us yuck it up on what we all think of different things. But
they have to have your permission around here. At Best Picture Cast, they usually just tune out. They don't ask for my permission at all. So that's good to know around here.
All right. But a few comments that we got from our YouTube subscribers here. We have T2, who says, great Peter Lorre impression, going back to Dana's impression during the Maltese Falcon. Former guest Kristen Battistella commented, thank you, Thomas, for the Guy Pearce praise. That was from our Oscars preview, as I still maintain that he was the best supporting actor performance for me this year.
I can live with that.
Then a Jack Carroll comments, I really appreciate the intelligence and unbiased examination of your debate, as well as your plain explanation of media. Keep it up. He further comments later, I really like you guys. Keep it up. So thank you, nice. Jack Carroll. We also have, this is a great, great film, the beginning of the celebrity biopics fad, and still one of the best. The country music aspect really could have been so cheesy, but it's a really meaty movie with a full range, talking about our coal miner's daughter episode. And then one from just today, holy shit, if Patton Oswalt was raised on Skywalker Ranch, you would get the bottom screen. I love Patton so much. Don't take any offense. And you were the bottom of the screen on the clip that was there, so it has to be you.
Yeah, I know. I figured.
But that's okay.
Shout out to the coal miner's daughter episode. I thought you guys did a great job. I enjoyed that episode quite a bit.
Well, thank you very much. And we very much appreciated your comments about our Oscars preview that was on a recent episode as well. So wanted to shout that out there.
I wasn't kissing your ass. It was from the heart and the mind. You guys did a great job with that episode.
Thank you. All right. Some other things of note. I watched Bronco Billy for you.
Oh, you did?
While I was in Cleveland, and then on my way back, I was able to finish both Aaron Brockovich and Bronco Billy on the flight back because I couldn't watch the Oscars that night until I got off the plane anyway. It's better than The Greatest Show on Earth. It's campy as hell.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I can't say that the execution would have been all that high on my list, but it was cute. I found it a little bit endearing, especially the further on in the film it went. The opening parts where you're kind of confused as to what's going on and who the characters are and how they all come in together didn't make a whole lot of sense to me initially, and it takes a while to really develop and kind of get into the body of the film. And it's also a little bit predictable of how she ends up with them inevitably. Although I will say I did not find the husband leaving with all of her stuff and her money and then them declaring her dead to be like the things I would have predicted. But eventually that once that happens, you're like, well, she's going to be found by this group of rough, tough people and she's going to buck it at first, but soon they'll win her over and she'll come to respect everything. Something to that effect. Mm-hmm. It was charming. Am I going to go back to it? I don't know. Am I more likely to go back to it than The Rookie? Possibly. Oh. I mean, at this point, The Rookie is just kind of its own place in G-Mode Kieran B Pantheon history. But, yeah. Because Bronco Billy has one thing that, or it does not have any Clint's nipples situations.
It doesn't, it doesn't. We'll go back to that in a bit with the other movie we'll discuss.
But for all the things that you could have chosen for me, not bad.
I'm glad you appreciate it.
It's a moderate, like 6 out of 10.
And he's gone on to say that it's one of his favorite characters that he's portrayed, which is wild to me. But he said that if he was ever trying to say something in one of his films, this was it. What he was trying to say, we can have that conversation on another day, I suppose.
He's won 2 Best Pictures and 2 Best Directors, and yet this is the film he was trying to say something in?
Granted, this came out before both, and I don't know if that statement was before both, but this is kind of his one delve into satire. I mean, this is definitely a satirical deal, which comes into some of its campiness and all that. I find it to be a fun watch. I revisited here. I also snaked the VHS of Bronco Billy here.
I haven't seen it in years.
Yeah, it's fun and it's definitely campy and goofy. I love the scene of where the guy is the husband who you're talking about, who stole the things and went out, and they find out that she's missing and find her dead. He's serving time in the psychiatric ward pretending to be crazy because he had to take a guilty plea on her death, and finds out that she's still alive. And he's like, oh, hey, wait a minute. Where does this leave me? I love that part of it. That's very fun. But yeah, it's a different type of film and certainly one that could go forgotten over the years. But I'm happy you gave it the time of the day, and it seems like you at least enjoyed it a little bit.
What year was it? I'm trying to remember.
I think it's like 1973.
No, it's right after The Shining. So I think it's 1980.
You're right.
Yeah, it's in that era because
it is 1980. My bad.
It was right after he did Every Which Way But Loose. And after he had done The Outlaw Josie Wales, if I remember right.
Yeah, and he clearly had a ton of disdain for the Western genre at the Western genre's end of its heat, where it was a lot of mostly like the TV stuff, where it was getting very go through the motions and this and that. And I feel like this movie's kind of commenting on his time with Rawhide and whatnot from there. But
yeah,
it's a fun enough watch.
On the flip side, I was informed earlier that you were in fact able to watch Bull Durham with your father.
I was. We watched last night.
You are a noted baseball films hater, despite the fact that is your favorite sport. So
hate is not the right word. Omission. Omit. I'm an omitter. I'm an omitter.
Fine. I stand by my statement, but whatever. I'm not going to belabor the point. But out of a labor of love, because we all thought this was a celebration of baseball for the baseball purists, Andrew and Sarah and myself all gave this to you as a Christmas present. What did you think?
Yes, watched it last night with my dad. He had seen it quite a bit. It wasn't a first watch for him. I think he even saw it recently with it at the cinema around here when it was playing. But I enjoyed it a lot. It's a great depiction of the game at that level. I think it's pretty authentic. It's very 80s. And speaking of Clint's nipple, we get a close up of Costner's nipple in this one, just a straight on close up. very sexual movie. Very like this must have been right on the heels of Body Heat. We're doing Body Heat on the baseball field. So, but no, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Good performances across. You'll always have your nitpicks and what here or there, but to me was a good depiction of the minor league life. I think that subject material is ripe for a Netflix series, or it felt like there was a fleshed out world that could have really gone deeper in this thing. And for a movie that's an hour and 48 minutes, I think like I could have kept living in this world, followed another player coming into this team and going on to the next. And that's the beauty of baseball. There is a line in it that kind of explains why I haven't seen a lot of these films. And I think I'm absolutely paraphrasing, but it's something along the lines of, at the end of the day, I come home and the last thing I want to think about is baseball. And that's kind of how I feel with some of these films is that, you know, when you're in it, you're in the grind and you're living it and you're doing it from a coaching perspective, that, you know, I don't need to see a cinematic portrayal of it. But, you know, I'm not a hater by any means. I enjoyed the film a lot. I own it now on Criterion Blu-ray, and I will go back to it again. And I will see these other ones I haven't seen, like Field of Dreams, like The Natural, Name Them 42. Keep them coming.
9 Men Out.
Yep. 8 Men Out. Yep.
Or 8 Men
haven't
Out,
seen that one. The great DB Sweeney. Yeah, so no, I appreciate the recommend. I got quite a bit out of it. Me and my dad had a fun time watching last night. So
Andrew will not let me live if I don't mention these two. The Sandlot, which
I grew up on The Sandlot.
Okay,
yeah, the kids movies I grew up on. So
Little Big League grew up. So Rookie of the Year in theaters. So like all of those we had on repeat. Major League is one of my favorites. I've probably one of my favorite sport movies. So. I have yet to be able to bring myself to watch it because of Bob's passing.
Well, apparently it's better than Grapes of Wrath. So, yeah. I watched it right after his passing, actually. As like a tribute, and it's just, the movie just ages like a fine wine. It's wonderful.
It is. I think it basically scrapes it out because of the rewatchability factor, but fair enough. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I know that your feelings about thinking about baseball at the end of the day are very much the same of my father watching any legal show on TV.
Ugh.
Yeah, well, it's the same type of thing. It's like you're in it. And I'll say, too, I coached a game in that stadium. Yeah, well, we were down there for a tournament at Raleigh Durham. They have the USA complex is in Cary, North Carolina. So it was based out of there. It was like a Team USA type of tournament. And one of the offshoot spots was the Durham Bulls Stadium. So it was cool to see that on film. They've kept it pretty preserved.
Well, that's good to know. So I do want to prepare you, since we've kind of loosely talked about it with our discussion or our allusions to the rookie. There is an upcoming Packer-Giant football game this season.
Oh, boy. I have to own up and throw down. I have to.
Oh, if only Aaron signs with the Giants.
Now that'll really be saucy.
Apparently, he's all but guaranteed to sign for the Steelers at this point, who will be playing the Packers. But I digress. It'll probably take him 3 months in a darkness retreat to get to that point. But
yeah,
yes, but yes, we will. I think we'll have to do a showdown.
We don't know yet when that is going to happen, so that will partially dictate when we'll be able to discuss the terms of the bet.
Okay.
But you will be back on in the fall, and even before that. The next time that you will be on is at the end of April for our discussion on another Best Picture winner, Gladiator. You will be on for your first time with our multiple-time guest, 5-time club member. I think this might be his 10th time, Rob Conlon.
Wow, a couple of 10-timers stepping in the Coliseum together for the first time.
That is correct.
Should be interesting.
Are you not entertained?
Let's just hope the listeners are entertained, especially out in Singapore. We got to get that rating back up to 1.
I know.
I got to check
it's really troubling.
Yeah, I'm sure that's keeping you up at night.
Among many other things.
Yeah, you're up, but it's not because of our ranking in Singapore.
Well, so you think.
I see. But Kieran, as always, thank you for being on with us. Yet again, tell the people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, Best Picture Cast. Come out, check us out, just as it sounds. Best Picture Cast. We are also now hosted by Captivate, recruited by the good people at Gmode over here. They do wonderful work at Captivate FM. And you can find us wherever pods are available. Best Picture Cast. Also, our socials. That's how it sounds. We will have a tournament coming up soon. We're going to be doing an actors tournament, a little different. We usually do movies. We're going to draft actors and try to parse it out that way. We'll do that as March Madness goes in. And yeah, chugging along with these Best Pictures. There's not many left. I think we're under 20 left here. So we're trudging through the list. It's great. Got to have you two guys on soon for our revisited episodes. I haven't forgotten about you. We're going to try to knock out a bunch of those moving in here. So.
I'll step in for you for Gandhi.
But we might need someone to come in and defend it here. I don't know. So that's a possibility.
Ben Kingsley did a really nice job.
He definitely did. Wouldn't take that away from him for sure.
But anyway, I also want to plug your YouTube channel since you have this great, fantastic, brand new, awesome looking studio. And you've had some content up there since the beginning of the season. So welcome to the world of video.
I know I have to look semi-presentable when I come on these things now. So yes, Best Picture Cast at YouTube. We're trying to build it. We have some things planned for it. We're still in our infantile stages of it, but we're working our way through. We have some material there. Our live show is up there. We did a live show in September on Jurassic Park. You can check that out too. We have another one coming up this fall. We haven't decided on the movie yet, but I don't want to hint anything out there because it hasn't been said yet, but let's just try to keep the speed over a certain amount, lest things get a little combustible. That's all I got to say.
On that same note, there was a rumor floating around the internets today that there is going to be a John Wick 5.
Really? Love it. Love those movies. Always a blast.
Hopefully it has Ana de Armas.
Well, she's in her own movie this time.
I know. But to put them together.
Well, he's also in the other one with her.
Oh, okay.
But sure, more Ana de Armas and action roles being super hot. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Anyway, other remaining thoughts for you, Dad, that aren't creepy old guy.
Creepy old guy. Okay.
You're starting to get to be like, every time you make one of those weird comments, such as I think this is the third time you brought up something like weirdly sexual, like staring at women's navels and bikinis and such like that. You're getting to be that one old dude from the Family Guy episodes that's always commenting on Chris.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, okay. Fuck you. Okay, I'm 61. I'm not dead. There are a lot of guys who are older than me that are not deemed creepy. Okay? God. Anyway. Yeah. No, as far as what's going on, I'm trying to catch up on a few things. I had not finished this season of Hacks. I'm almost done with it. I've been doing that at my lunch hour just because I decided I needed to have kind of a chuckle here and there. So I've been doing that. So I'm going back through and trying to clean up some stuff. It's been kind of nice. You know, I mean, I enjoyed the Academy Awards. I'm plowing through the Hollywood Reporter episode, which is post-Oscar. Came in yesterday. So I've been reading through that and just trying to keep up with stuff. That's about it. I mean, I'm trying to live the best I can and doing the best I can.
Yes, this post-Oscars malaise where you're so worked up and ramped up to get into stuff and have to watch so many films within a very short period of time. And then it's kind of the immediate after effect. You're like, all right, I don't have anything else to do. And this also being my spring break, allegedly, from law school, there isn't a whole lot extra. Like, I had a period last night where I'm like, I don't have anything immediately due. I don't know what to do with myself because I don't have to work till 10 p.m. So I decided to sit down and watch more Gandhi. But anyway, I digress. I will say...
That's how you reward yourself.
That is true. It was definitely a reward.
Sounds like self-flagellation.
Flagellation?
Flagellation.
Self-flagellation is very different.
Yes, it is. Self-flagellation. Excuse me if I misspoke.
Anyway, I have gotten through 2.5 QT movies that I hadn't seen before.
Oh, which ones?
Of the missing ones in my QT oeuvre. That would be Kill Bill Volume 1, which I did not much care for. Volume 2, which I thought was significantly better than Volume 1.
I agree with that.
Then I have very much tried and failed to keep trying to get back through Death Proof, but it is rough.
Well, that's his weakest film, and I like Kill Bill 1. I didn't want to say I agreed with you saying you didn't like it, but 2 is the way meatier, better film. Death Proof is his like schlocky action kind of thing, and I like Death Proof, but it's definitely his weakest film.
I'm finding it hard to follow. It's filmed in a very specific aesthetic that it's supposed to be like 70s horror film that you found.
B-film,
yeah, kind of thing. And I get where he's going for it, but I don't have much to draw on to appreciate what he's trying to do with that film. And so it's very difficult for me to connect. I'm having to watch it in like 20-minute segments. Because
did you say that's the one you watched half of?
Yes. Approximately.
All right, well, that's one where the first half is much slower than the second half. Like the second half is like all action. And it like ends abruptly. So they're still in the bar. It's a slow build to that one, and it very roller coaster to boom, so.
Okay. All right. So maybe finishing it will, but I've twice I'm not sure I really care for this all that much. So I went and watched parts of Inglourious Bastards, and I watched like 40 minutes of that. But anyway, the point being that
Bonjour.
I will eventually, here in the very near future, also be getting to your favorite, The Hateful Eight, which is the only...
you haven't seen it yet?
That is correct. That is the only remaining one that I have not seen a single frame of.
Bringing it back to Stagecoach right there. And Netflix has the extended episodic version. I recommend you do that because it breaks it up into 4 segments, and it seems like the way that you watch them, that would be appropriate for you to kind of watch it like a TV show.
Okay. I thought about trying to do it that way and see if that would make, any major difference to me, but we'll see. I might. And it doesn't matter.
You've never seen it before, or you haven't?
That is correct. I have not seen Hateful Eight before. Okay. I've seen Django one time. I was going to watch all the way from Kill Bill to the end of where he's at now, just for my own satisfaction. But I've only seen Django once, and it was like well over a decade ago. I don't remember a ton about it.
Oh, that's a fun one to go back to too. That's a good watch. Yeah. I've done them in sequence. It's I like all this stuff, but I get why certain ones could be polarizing.
Then again, a film that I have had difficult times with in the past, and the one time that I did watch it was The Verdict, and I did start the first few minutes of that today. I am finding it more enjoyable this time through, but again, on our prep for the 1982 episode upcoming, I did finish Gandhi. That is going to be near the top or at the top of the list for quite a while during this prep. I think I have like 30 movies on my list, and I can imagine that's a lot better than a lot of the other things, but there are a lot of good movies to look forward to that I've never seen before, like Night Shift or Fast Times at Ridgemont High, First Blood. A lot of things to potentially catch up on, or some older favorites to kind of revisit. Blade Runner, The Thing.
Saw First Blood at the theater on a date.
Interesting
film.
I'll be curious to watch it for the first time. Anyway, I believe that'll do it for us this week. Thank you for listening. You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity. Next week, for our 254th episode, we welcome 5-time club member and my sister, Allison Duncan, to discuss one of the most celebrated and revolutionary animation films of the last half-century, Toy Story from 1995. Directed by John Lasseter, written by Joss Whedon, Andrew Stanton, Joel Cohen, a different Joel Cohen, and Alec Sokolow. Music by Randy Newman, starring Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, Annie Potts, John Ratzenberger, Don Rickles, Wallace Shawn, and Jim Varney. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you.
That's RELGOOD, partner.
Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in our fun. You can also email the show at thenewRonnieDuncanStudios.com or at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok at the handle @GMoPodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ryan Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM, and our technical provider is Riverside FM.